welcome to Mystery of the Soul. I'm your co-host Leo, a psychic medium, a Reiki master, an EFT tapping practitioner, and a shaman. I'm joined by my good friend Julia, a doctor of physical therapy, yoga instructor, and Reiki master. Our podcast explores the depth of the soul, the spiritual, and the supernatural. Hi guys, welcome back to Mystery of the Soul. I'm Leo, and I have my co-host Julia with me, and we have a special guest tonight. Julia, go ahead and say hi, and if you want to introduce our guest, you can do that.
Hi, everyone. So good to be back here with all of you. And I'm super excited to introduce our guest tonight. It's Sue Jacquot, and she is a grief coach, but I'm going to hand it actually over to you, Sue, and let you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and kind of all of the hats that you wear.
Oh, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Jacquot. I am actually a grief coach and educator, and I call myself an intuitive grief coach and educator. And I'm a master energy healer and basically everything spiritual. That's a good way to summarize it up.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Perfect. So Sue,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know that you have kind of a lot of topics that we kind of highlighted discussing this evening. What is the one thing that you feel like you are feeling inclined to start with?
Very good question. I guess probably how did I get into this line of work? You know, I mean, really generally, like, who really, I mean, I don't know. It's very rewarding when I'm working with people, but it's wasn't my career to begin with. I was a pharmacist and a pharmacy manager for, I won't tell how many years because it gives away my age. So what happened to me is something that I think a lot of people, you just don't think something like this is ever going to happen to you. And we got a phone call. It was on a Wednesday morning at 6:30 that my son was gone. Like, he was already gone. And that is so earth shattering for any parent to go through. I could have considered myself a really strong person. And even if something, bad, we all go through life. And if even, things go wrong and whatever, like, okay, that I'm good at that. You know what I mean? Like, what do I got to do? Let's make a list. I can handle anything. You know what I mean? Well, you know what I mean? I have a list. I can check off. I can make these phone calls. I can go do this, and this, my husband had taken the call downstairs and him and my daughter were literally screaming and crying. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't move. I literally was just stuck there. So, needless to say, it just literally shattered me as a person. It shattered everything I believed in. You just kind of have this sense of, okay, we know what life is all about. I had already been dabbling in spirituality, thank God, because I think that kind of really set me up to help me through this. And, it changes everything that you believe. Like, you believe it going on through life that like, okay, things can happen, but something like this is just like your whole entire life is a shattered piece of glass all over the floor. And where do you even begin to start putting it together? So that's realistically, I should back up one little bit. So I obviously went through an extremely dark period with zero hope. I was worried that I wasn't going to make it. I have 3 children, so and an amazing husband and 2 amazing daughters. But the pain was so severe that I literally didn't think I was going to make it. Whether I was going to die of a heart attack or chest pain or if I was, going to decide to do something different. I really did. I honestly thought about joining my son many, many, many times. So it was when I hit rock bottom that it just hit me. And I decided, and I said, I know what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to help people. This is the most incredible pain. I didn't even know this type of pain existed. And that's literally where it really all started, that I just said, I'm going to learn every single thing that I can about grief, about what happened. I've been a little, studying and reading a lot of books. This type of stuff spirituality had interested me, about your soul and, all of those things. But I was like, I am going to understand everything there is to know about grief, how to help myself through the grief. And then in turn, I'm going to help other people. And having a purpose like that is what got me out of bed. Hard to just end this part of the story with is, it was pretty close to my son, considering, he lived in Boston, but had a really decent mother-son bond. And I mean, he certainly didn't tell me everything. Oh my goodness. But we had a pretty good open communication. And then just the thought, I used to just ask him random questions like, who'd you go out with dinner for last night? I just always wanted to be a part of his life. You know what I mean? And I was, knew most of his friends. And that's when actually that was part of the whole process, was I have to figure out a way that, this love isn't gone. He's not gone. This just didn't all end. There's more to this, and I'm going to figure it out. And I did connect with a couple of good mediums at the time, and that really helped. So, Leo, your work that you do is, in many ways, I'm sure, so helpful to people, because, the couple of people that I saw that were able to connect me to my son saved me, to know that he was still right there. And so now where do we go from there? So that's kind of how I get into this.
I have a question just to kind of back up a little bit further, Sue. You said as all this happened, you were already into spirituality a little bit. What got you actually interested in spirituality?
Interesting question. You just wonder how, whether you want to call it God, your universe, or whatever works. I say God. It all started with, I was a pharmacist, and I was a pharmacist for many years, and my patients weren't getting better. And that was very frustrating to me. What I'm saying? They'd start off, because I was in the same pharmacy for many years, and start off on one prescription, and then they go see the doctor, and now they're increasing the dose, and, and they didn't have any education on trying to take care of themselves better. So what started it is then I went and got certified as a health coach, figuring that I can kind of incorporate some of that information. So I know it's not really spirituality, but that was my breaking away from, I was still working full time as a pharmacist, but just kind of breaking away. And once I opened up that door, it just started opening up other doors. And then it just very, very slowly, I got attuned to Reiki. And that was one of the very first things I did. And then there was a woman I found that just did a lot of angel communication. So it was just very generic type of, well, Reiki isn't, but just little things that I would just come across. I mean, I really didn't have a spiritual mentor. I just, had a couple of friends that were kind of interested and would see something pop up, and we would be like, oh, you want to try this class, or do you want to do this? And I just absolutely fell in love, and I couldn't get enough knowledge about all of this. And there is, even now, you can't, the more I learn, the more questions that I have. So that started that whole journey, and that would be a good 8, I don't know if I want to say 10 years, but maybe about 8 to 10 years before my son passed, that I had started on, this spiritual journey. Just randomly. Just seriously randomly, just a little frustrated with pharmacy, but never thinking I was going to leave pharmacy. Everything I was learning about spirituality and your soul and all of that, and angels and, all those different things were a hobby. It was just something I was just very interested in, never thinking I was going to leave pharmacy, but yeah.
Thank you.
What role do you feel that suffering plays in spiritual growth and healing? For someone who has already had that kind of interest and, starting this, and then somebody who's been through something very traumatic, filled with a lot of grief, obviously there's a piece that changes with that, right? Like you said yourself, like you went to a place that was just a very different place. Like, what's next? How do I get past this? How do I move beyond this? How do you feel that connects with spiritual growth and healing?
I think and this is actually, it's very common, and I know you both know that, but for the audience, when someone goes through, it doesn't have to be always, a traumatic death. It can be other reasons, but I think you just have this spiritual awakening. And I really think that's exactly what happened. I was headed on that path, but then that was my boom, where just like the explosion of, being able to actually, I had some experience, early on, but I think it kind of shut it down of seeing, relatives, past relatives in a very loving way, but it freaked me out. So I just kind of said, don't ever do that again. So I think I had the potential. And then I think it just, I think it just exploded when I lost my son. Because I had one, and I still think to this day, I have part of me is up there, and actually reality, we know part of me is up there. But with him, part of me is up there with him, and the other part of me is down here.
Sue, when your son passed, you had this realization that you needed to help yourself and find out as much as you could. Mm-hmm. Where did you go first, or where did you look first?
Ooh, that's a good question. Thankfully, one of my very close, I shouldn't say thankfully, I'll back up, but I'll start it. Thankfully, I had a very good friend that was already really deep into spirituality. So she really was part of my beginning learning about it because she was so into it. The bad part about it is that she had also lost a son. At that time, our sons so my son's been gone 5 years. So hers would be 15 years. So her son had passed 10 years before mine. So she was realistically the one, that just kind of guided me to the right books. Cause there is so many. So that's a great question. And she kind of guided me that way. And she actually she doesn't do this, and people don't know that she does this, but she is a medium. So she's one of the ones that would connect me to my son. She has a professional job and doesn't want it to interfere with her job or whatever. She feels like people wouldn't understand. So she was one of the ones that connect me to my son. And she really was the one that thankfully started at least the pavement of the way. Cause where do you go? My brain was fried. The grief brain is real that they talk about, just connecting the two dots on anything, driving someplace without getting lost. Never mind trying to find the path forward and, what class do I take or which book do I read to get the best knowledge and whatever. So I did have someone that was able to do that at the beginning for me.
What would you say would be your number one in terms of a book, or maybe it's a podcast, or maybe there's something else that you find would be really helpful I would imagine that some people, they don't want to reach out to anybody. They just want to stay in a place for a while. They're not ready yet to reach out.
Yep.
But they know that they need something. Is there maybe one or two or a couple of different tools that you would, either a book that, like I said, like something that they could have, that they could sit with and just begin to kind of start that process before they're ready to actually reach out?
Okay, that is such a great question, because there are so many people that they're not ready to reach out. Like,
Yeah.
they're just, for whatever reason it is, they just, grief is very isolating. You feel that like no one understands you. So that is such a great question. I would say my first reference would be, one of the people that I got my certifications from was David Kessler. And he has the website grief.com. He has a lot of podcasts, YouTube videos. He has, 4 or 5 books. He has then of course, he has a certification that for people that, want to become a grief coach and grief educator. And so I would say probably start there, because it's just something that you could do, on your computer on your own time, a little bit at a time, one podcast at a time, one book at a time.
I think it's great for people to have that, because you think about it, it's like, how many of us just kind of get like like even getting just like lost in looking at something on your phone or looking at the computer, like it's a distraction, right? Like it's something
Yes.
that takes you out of what you're actually experiencing, gives you an area to focus. So, for somebody who's in that point where it's just they like need something to distract them, but we want something that's going to positively impact or help them in some way as they're starting to go through this process. Like, I think that that's great for them to have something like that.
Yeah, I honestly think that's the first one. Then, of course, I have one book, and it's going to come to me before this is over. So we're going to go back to that. In the meantime, when we're talking, I'm going to try to do 2 things at once and kind of start. I can't believe I forget the name of the book, because that was one of my absolute favorites. It's like highlighted through the whole entire book like a encyclopedia. I will definitely figure that out.
That's okay. When we get it,
Yeah.
we'll put it in the show notes later, Sue.
Oh, then that's perfect. Thank you. Then I don't have to worry. Yeah, because I had one in particular that I personally love the most. So, because I wanted to know everything about my son's journey, not only how I could connect to him, how I could learn how to survive, but also where is he? What's he doing? Mine went beyond. I was just so used to knowing, not everything, but knowing about what he was doing. So the fact of not knowing his whole process of what he just went through and not being able to ask him, that was hard.
So I have another question, Sue. So as you started exploring different modalities to start your healing process, do you remember a moment or a time when you started to feel a shift in your healing, and maybe what was going on around that time?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, so one thing I want to say is that there's no comparison in grief for anyone. Like, even whether you're comparing losing a child or a spouse or a parent or a sibling, there's no comparing, because everybody's pain is individual and everyone grieves differently, and grief is not linear. So you could be going through, as you move on in grief, through a period of time where you could be doing a little better or feeling a little bit of hope, but you can cycle right back into, where you were. So for me, I would actually say, as far as a turning point, that's actually a hard question, because I was really stuck in the grief for a good year and a half. Like, a lot of times people say, like, after a year, it's like, oh, I'm going to be over it. Like, oh, I mean, like, people from the outside would probably think I was doing okay. But I was probably really stuck in grief for a year and a half.
Let me ask it a different way also. And so as you were going through your journey with the healing and exploring different modalities, um, was there a time that you could remember that you maybe had a realization that for the longest time you felt stuck in your grief
Mm-hmm.
and the reality of your son no longer being part of your world? Was
Mm-hmm.
there a time where you maybe had a realization or started to have maybe a perspective shift that it was possible to move forward without your son in your world now?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. And I would still say, I mean, I probably had bits and pieces of times before the year and a half, but my answer to that would be is that I realized that my son is not gone. His physical body is gone. And that I miss. I mean, I miss his car pulling in my driveway and I miss looking at him. And I definitely miss that. And that's never going to go away. But the change for me came when I realized that the veil is so thin and he's right next to me. And I know he's right next to me right now. And he has been outstanding with sending signs. And that's another whole podcast that we could do. But I mean, outstanding signs that you cannot deny. I mean, you seriously cannot deny. So that would just renew my hope that he literally is right here. So we have to figure out, how do we keep this relationship going so that you are still in my life, in my everyday life, even though your physical body isn't here.
So I saw on your website Albert Einstein's quote about
Yes.
energy.
Mm.
And that's something that my husband and I shared with our kids. We lost our dog, which was it was um it was tough for them because they didn't know what life was like without her because I had had her before they were born.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was like, how do we start having these conversations with them about this? And it was something that, you think about these things and I've even talked to some people about it. It's like nobody really wants to talk about death or dying or what
No.
happens after death
No.
or anything. And it's, not having those conversations, I think makes it harder for a lot of people because then we just don't have anything for information. Like there's nothing to stand on. Um, and explaining to them that energy doesn't go away. And like you said, there are signs, there are small things that you'll
Yeah.
see, or I think it can be anything that lets you know that energy is still there. It's still very palpable and present.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of tuning into it, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's just different. It's,
Yeah,
it's it's just different. And for not even just a child, but even the loss of a pet. Oh my gosh. And that's like our society is grief illiterate. So a lot of
yeah.
the things that I try to do is just talk to people about grief, in a way. And I'm not doing it, I've made it very clear for attention for me. It's just that what I went through, and I just don't, and saw for one example is the people that you think will be there. And this is in almost every grief book that's out there. The people that you think would be the ones that would be there for you. Generally, some of those are the ones that are not. They can't handle the new person that you are, or they simply can't handle being with someone in that much pain. And then there's people that are kind of on the outside of the parameter that step in and they're your support. So so it's so interesting. So I tried it because a lot of times when I talk to people, they say I didn't mean to turn away from someone. I just didn't know what to do. So I try to tell people. But you mentioning, Julia, about your dog, that's just another one that, like, I'm an extreme animal lover. Leo, yeah, I don't know. I assume you must
I have
feel
two
the same.
cats.
Okay, so doesn't matter what type of animal it is, but it's just, oh my gosh, like our society, you say you lose a dog. No, unless you're talking to someone that's a really animal lover, they're going to really understand what you're going through. That is a deep. A dog is unconditional love. I actually call dogs angels with wings. I mean, they literally was sent to us to make our life better. Except, well, one of mine was sent to me, I think, to cause a little mischief to make me laugh. And I honestly think he was sent to me by my son. Just to make sure that I have a little laugh every day because he's crazy. So, yeah, but like even society doesn't understand that. Like, even just a dog, like they can't talk about it. They don't want to bring it up. And so then if we can't talk to people or understand that the pain from losing your dog doesn't go away in a day, and you can be in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other thing is like I've talked to a few people is like knowing what to say. It's like you were talking about those people who kind of back away. I think it's really hard to see somebody that you care about in pain and suffering. And then
It
when you
is.
don't know what to say to them and you don't know what to do for them and you're just feeling like, I don't know what to do. And instead of asking, it's like, I'm just going to step away and give space and because I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to, cause more of a problem. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing?
Yep.
I think there's a lot of like second guessing ourselves in those moments where we are uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I think I wouldn't know how to put a percentage on that, but I think that that's how most people feel. They have no idea. They have good intentions. They don't know what to do. So if I could spend just even a couple minutes on a couple little suggestions, I feel, and it also depends, and everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah.
From my story when I share it compared to some people are maybe that little bit more private. It depends, obviously, how well you know the person. It's literally just the one thing I have to say is show up. I mean, if you're close to that person, if that person is in your family, if that person is considered one of your closest in your ring, your, friendship circle, you show up. You just literally show up and you don't even have to say anything. You just be there. Your presence, you just be there. And because there is no words, and a person that's in grief, they can't be fixed. So there's really nothing that you can say. And usually things that people do say that mean well can actually end up hurting a grieving person. It can be like, well, God must have needed him at home, more than, well, when you say it to especially a new grieving mother, it's like, I could punch you because guess what? You know how bad I need him here? Heck with what God needs. You know what I'm saying? So people that are in really deep grief are very sensitive. And I think that's what scares people as well. But I would say just show up. Another thing I would say is food. Like, and if you feel they're more of a private person, all it takes is a text. And just say, I've just left, just being food, I've just left something on your front door. I had people bring over, just literally like, grocery, like just staples, paper plates, napkins, and plastic utensils. So that for my family when they were eating, or if anybody was eating at my house, because I was very lucky. And for me, that's what I needed. I did have, my close circle was with me an awful lot. And I don't know what I would have done. I was very, very fortunate to just have people just sit with me in my grief. And sometimes it would just be repeating my stories of my son over and over again. And that's one of the top things that a griever needs to do is they just need their story to be witnessed. So I would, definitely food. I mean, I know people send cards.
I just wanted to point out, Sue, with what you're saying as far as supporting someone who's grieving and just showing up for them, probably one of the best things is not necessarily what you can say to them, but just actively listening.
Actively listening is the best thing you can do. Literally the best thing you can do. Yes. And say their name. I don't care if it's a day after they passed or 5 years.
Right, don't be afraid. Right.
Please say their name. And I think people are, the talk is that, look, oh, I'm afraid if I bring up, your son's name, you might be having a good day. Well, guess what? Like, and I don't want to make you sad, like in case you had forgotten. Well, I can guarantee you there's not one moment of every moment that I'm awake that I don't know that my son is on the other side. So when you say his name to me, when someone comes up to me, whether they're someone that I see in the grocery store or whether it is a friend or someone that brings up a beautiful story about him, if they call me or send a text, it's the best gift that you can give me, because that's the only way we can keep him still, like what you call alive, is his spirit alive. And so that is the absolute best gift you could give them, is just mention their name, just in any way. And sometimes people will call me and they'll, whether they've seen a sign themselves or they'll just, run across a random picture of Nick and they'll send it to me. And you know what? It actually may make me cry, but guess what? It's a beautiful cry. It's just like an absolute beautiful cry. And it's the best gift. Say their name. Yeah.
Sue, I know that you had mentioned a little bit about healing through action and connection. And I wanted to hear a little bit more from you about that in terms of, I know that you had shared about David Kessler and some of the frameworks, and this was kind of a piece of that. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean about healing through action and connection?
I mean, besides the learning that I was doing about so more of the action. So for me, it was until I felt like I could communicate with my son myself. I don't want to say, because this is not a good thing to do, but I did utilize, mediums to just reinforce what I was feeling. I don't know if that's answering your question or not, but that's what kept me on. I didn't do it all the time, because I know, you need to go through this process on your own, but a really good medium is really helpful in grief. And I would just the confirmation sometimes of, what I'm doing or whatever, and getting the information that way, until I could learn how to communicate with my son myself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that does. And I mean, I think part of it is, like you said before, everybody's journey with grief is very unique. So, I think people go through this, well, why did it happen to them and not to me? And well, what if this happened? Or, so I think that having these different aspects of like how we can heal, and then different ways that we can connect, and whether it's with other people who are there to help us through the process, or
absolutely.
if it's somebody who is a medium, or I think there are so many different people that can be beneficial. Whether it's
Great.
people who are strangers. I actually have somebody I know who just lost a parent, and they said that they went to kind of a grief group, and they said, we sat down and one of their siblings was with them and just like talked the entire time about their parent. And my friend just cried. And it was just like, but afterwards felt like this was so healing for me to go and to just, be there and doing this.
Absolutely. Now, absolutely. So, thank you for bringing that up, because that is huge. I absolutely would say, and I can't, there's so many different layers to this, but connecting with other people that have some idea of what you're going through, community is, oh my gosh, I would not have actually made it without becoming friends with other moms that had lost children, just because that I could be with someone that truly understood where I was at was so beneficial. So there's a couple of them now, which is really nice. There's a place called Hayden's House. It's Hayden house, and it's in New Jersey. And it's for, and like I said, there's so many other types of grief as well, but since mine in particular is loss of a child, they offer, and it's actually free. It's all fundraised, and you go for a weekend, and it's a weekend all about dealing with your grief, and it's all with other bereaved moms or mothers and fathers, and they have, if you had a miscarriage or a stillbirth, or you had a young baby that died, or they tend to break it down so that you have even more in common with the people that you're with. And honestly, Leo, I have to say that was probably one of my really now, like it's just triggering my memory. And that was right around a year and a half that I had gone down there. And that was an experience. It was, they know what they're doing. They broke the grief right open. So if you'd been hiding it or stuffing it, like there was no way they brought you back down and then just filled you back up. And then we did that through all sorts of ceremonies and lighting of candles and telling stories and slideshows about our children and butterfly releases. So honestly, and now there's more of those that are popping up that are like, retreats that you can go on to after having, and so that you get to meet people. And now I am in contact with all of those people in particular that were on my retreat. And then you start meeting people, through a Facebook group of other people, other grieving moms. And that was huge for me. My experience with one particular grief group, which is, I think this one's, yes. So this one's for parents as well, is I walked in, and for me, this particular, it's a national group and there's chapters everywhere, and, people love it, but so probably every meeting that they have, there's going to be someone new. So they go around the table and everybody tells you their story. And I was already in so much pain. And at that point, for me, this is for me, early on, I wasn't able to, I didn't have the bandwidth to hold that much sadness in the energy around me, to just go from one devastating story to another devastating. And I can, and other people, and maybe if I was further along in grief, that would have been beneficial for me. But to me, it was like, oh my gosh, as though I didn't feel so alone in my grief because there was a whole room in there. But I have found that I like grief groups or women or whatever that get together, or men. And it's not just talking about the grief and the horror of, that day, that week, but now what's even a baby step moving forward. Like I have to be, for me to keep moving on, especially at the beginning, would be, okay, we can talk about the sheer pain of this, but I need an actionable step or someone to talk about, like, just giving you a little bit of hope, because I'd say for a lot of people, including myself, I had no hope. So, I would recommend to people to look for a support group that if this resonates with them, that maybe moves a little bit forward as well. It's not just repeating. And although your story needs to be repeated many, many times, but then sometimes it's just hard to listen to everyone else's. So I benefited from other grief groups that I had gone to, that we all told our story, but then then there might be topics. So instead of the same old first week, and there's still other really hard topics, but then we would move on to, well, how are we going to handle like this first holiday? How do you handle the first anniversary? So even though they are sad, but it would give me actionable tools, so you're not in your head going like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do on the first anniversary? What am I going to do on his first birthday after he passed? Well, how am I going to handle Mother's Day? And there's an awful lot of Facebook groups. It's so easy to just, Google grief and a whole bunch of stuff will come up. And I found a lot of, even them just being online, not even going in person, would be online, would just, just to give you that help, like answers, not, like I said, the most important thing is to have someone listen to your story. Yes. But then there's so many things that you need to deal with. So to have someone share, and some things that some people do might not resonate with you. And sometimes I would get really great ideas from people. And it was really interesting. Sometimes I like, with some of the moms that I've shared and some of the traditions that they've kept through, like, say, the Christmas holidays, that I think is so beautiful that they would be able to keep. And I love hearing about that, but they were like a tradition I can't. And it's just a fact. It's just where my journey is. And so that's what I'm saying in like a grief group. So one that kind of gives you some tools.
So, Sue, one of the things that you wanted to talk about tonight also was the mind-body connection.
Yes.
What do you want to say about that?
I want to say that I think a lot of people don't realize is that my favorite saying is the body keeps score. The body absolutely keeps score. And also, the body does not forget. Like, one perfect example, it might have been right around the 1.5 year mark that we had talked about, Leo. I'm just thinking to myself, right around maybe a little over a year. And my son had died on the 19th. So the 19th of every month would be just like another like knife in my chest. If I didn't already have 10 knives in my chest, that would just be like, it was just, 1 month anniversary, 2 month anniversary, 3 month anniversary. And then you get to the 1 year. And it was really interesting because this one morning, of course, I still woke up in my grief and whatever. And I was actually on my Peloton bike, and I had gone on my bike because my son had passed right before COVID. So, my kids were home that didn't live at home, and they were like, Mom, like, I really wasn't doing good, but they were like, today you are so off. Like, can you please just at least get on your Peloton, like do something, like there's something, like you're just so off. You're forgetful. You're dropping things, like something is so off. And as I got on the bike, they're like, even if you just pedal, just like, you just need to move. And so all of a sudden it hit me. It was like the 15th or 16th month, and it was the 19th. And I hadn't like remembered the date. And yet my body knew it was the 19th. And I can't tell you how many times things like that have happened. Like, we got the call at 6:30 in the morning. So I woke up, and that's generally around the time, that I wake up, and maybe with losing a child anyways, or losing someone important to you, you'd wake up in the morning with that fierce reality that this is your life and that wasn't a dream. But right at that time, for so long, was just chest pain that was really severe. It's just like your body just knew, you know what I mean? When my body just knew at what time. My other ways, your body, my immunity. I mean, I got sick so many times. It's unfortunate that a lot of people, I've been very lucky that I have been able to heal through the things that I have, but there's so many people, especially parents or people that are in deep grief, that come down with autoimmune diseases, or I hate to say it, but cancer from all the stress. It's very, very common to get really physically sick from it as well. Yeah. And your body just, it does keep score.
Did you have any questions, Julia? Where you'd like to go? And if not, I can go off of.
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking about in general, it's I mean, I'm a big believer in mind-body connection. So I don't know if you know this, I'm a physical therapist.
Okay.
So,
yes.
Yes, and I'm a yoga teacher.
Okay.
So I do firmly believe in the mind-body connection aspect of things. And I think that probably, like, your kids were telling you, like, move, get on your Peloton, move. I think that movement is probably one of the big things that, when you're in that grief mode, it's like, I just want to curl up under a blanket in a dark place and, stay there. It's at least, my experience.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I don't
exactly
want to,
right.
I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go anywhere. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I found that some of the absolute best things for me were having to get up and go to work, be around people, you know, be outside, be moving around, walking, getting out into nature. And I think that that's where I started seeing, some of the signs from my experiences, it's whether it's a dragonfly or a hawk
Hmm.
or
Yep. Yep.
our little red, we have a cardinal male and female that come and visit at our
Hmm.
house.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's just the little places that you can catch those signs, being out and moving and doing things. I think that
Oh, absolutely.
that movement part for me, I think is probably one of the big things that I would say is like get out as much as it's the last thing you want to do. Just go walk in your yard. Just
Absolutely.
get
Absolutely.
get outside, get your body going.
Mhm.
I feel like that's one of the things that I would try to, get people to do. Take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass, get that
Yes.
get that get
Grounding.
that
Yep.
grounding. Um,
Yes.
just to allow for some energy exchange to happen
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
it's not getting stuck.
Oh, you literally just said it perfect. And the greatest at that time we lost our one of our dogs 1 month before I lost my son. And so that was so devastating. But we had two dogs. It was comforting when I lost my son, knowing that he had his dog with him. So I feel like I haven't mourned that dog as much because I know that he's with my son. But I had another dog, and I have to walk the dog. I mean, that was so for me. I have to say honestly, at the beginning, even now with everything that I know, and I would tell someone just exactly like you did, Julia, how important get outside. And I don't care how cold it is. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. Your body needs to be outside. Bundle, wear a hat, wrap a scarf around you, put your winter coat on, put your boots on, whatever it takes. And oh my gosh, I have this, and my puppy, she's a good walker, but, we would walk, I mean, probably 3 miles a day in the rain, in the snow. I mean, and it had to put a little winter coat on her. And oh my gosh, because at that point, now we're talking maybe, I mean, I walked her all along, but at this point, when I was a little bit more into the healing phase. And so, I was alone a lot more during the day. This is, after the 1 year mark, and it was me and my dog. And so, oh my gosh, just get outside, go outside with the dog. And we would walk for hours, and just whether it was a summer or whether it was a winter, no matter what it was, that was extremely healing. Also for me is going to the beach. And that's probably been one of my most healing places. Is I just find so much comfort on the beach. And at the very beginning, that would be a place that I would be able to go and I could scream and just, because we happen to have a place that's has kind of a private beach, or if you went in the winter, there's no one there. And I would just be able to, which you can't do in your house, even if no one's home because your neighbors could hear you or whatever. And I would just be able to just scream, yell at God, yell at why me, as well as looking at the beauty that life still does hold. So it would be sometimes I go for a walk, it would be the screaming and crying, which I needed that unbelievable release of a million tears. And it felt so darn good to let that screaming out. And then many other times it would just be looking at that absolute beauty of the ocean that would calm me. So I call those like little wins. And when I am coaching people, like I do talk to them about that. It's all the like little things. Like you said, if you can just go for a walk, and even if your walk is only 15 minutes, I'm not even saying 15, even if it's for 5 minutes in your yard. And if you can even put your, feet in the grass to ground you, And for anybody that understands about that, it just keeps you in your body and keeps you grounded to the ground. Because what I find happens is that you dissociate from your body. And what that means is that you look like you're all here. You're like, you're walking around and you're doing everything, but you're actually not in your body. And that led me to a couple of like physical accidents, not car accidents, but just, hurting myself by just not being grounded, and just going through the motions of things, but not really being present. My mind was just, off. And so, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Getting outside, huge.
I think movement and physical activity in general also helps kind of expend a lot of that overwhelming emotional energy.
Yes. It's a place for some of the energy to go.
To go, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
A place to put it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, a place to put, and going outside, it's just healing. I mean, it really is. Nature is just healing. And if you are at the point, and this certainly wouldn't be for a new griever that happens to be listening to this, they're, and rightfully so, I was not at that point. But to go outside, there usually is something beautiful to look at. Like even right now, it's, just the beginning of spring, and to just see, and I didn't appreciate this in as the changing of the seasons after I first lost my son, because that would make me angry. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's another season without him here. But now I've moved past that point, that like by being outside and hearing the birds, or just, they bring you so much peace. And watching the flowers as they start to pop up out of the ground, or some of the trees that are blooming, and just being able to be thankful or grateful for the beauty of something outside, even if it's small, and even if it's only for a minute. Then you can go back to being sad, but that's still a win. Like, that's seriously still a win. Like, if you were able to get your mind into a good place, even just, a moment or two is good. And then I believe in gratitude, believe it or not, which a lot of people in early grief, I didn't have any gratitude at all. And I had one of my son's closest friends say to me that he was really a big believer in gratitude and how much it had helped him in his life. And he said, and I'm like, well, like, what are you saying you're grateful for? Like, talk to me. And he's like, well, so right now I just say, thank you, God, for today. I made it through another day, because that's the most he was grateful for at that time. He was really close to my son, and but he was still able to do that. And so he taught me that beautiful lesson, and you have to be ready. I would never push that on someone that's at their first, deep grief. But I think trying to find 3 things a day that you're grateful for, if you could try to fall asleep many times, most of the time, for a very long time, I cried myself to sleep. But if you can, the last thing that you do is just find 3 things that you're grateful for. And it can be anything. You have a roof over your head. And even in deep grief, you still have, like, I would be so grateful for my 2 daughters. I'd be so grateful for my husband. I'd be so grateful for that dog that made me get up and get out of the house. So gratitude in grief, which sounds extremely hard, but it's helpful. Baby steps.
Sue, you and I had a conversation a while back about parents that lose a child and them grieving differently, and how do they support each other. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Because statistically, husbands and wives that have lost a child, I think it was at 50% rate of a divorce. But then recently, but I don't have this as a fact, but I'll just mention it, that it was told to me that it has moved up much higher. So it can be very, very hard for 2 parents in grief, because, not to generalize, but people grieve differently. 2 people grieve differently. And then if you take a female, which is, or that tends to be more emotional, wanting to talk about their emotions, wanting to cry, where many of the men either they're quiet about it. They keep it all inside themselves. They go back to work. Like for me, my husband, his outlet is golf. And that has been so healing for him. So and for me, it was like getting together or working with these other grieving moms or taking classes or, though that was my thing. And we both just understood. And not that it was always easy, not that it was always easy. It's taken some time to understand that we grieve differently, because sometimes when I was in a crazy lunatic phase, I would, be like, well, how come you're never crying? Where I was like crying every minute. And, but then you look at it, he, I think, was trying to be strong. Sometimes men can feel that way, of trying to be strong for the family. And, everybody was so afraid that I think everybody walked around on tiptoes around me, because it was even my daughters, because who were also in such and horrible pain. And siblings, that's another whole topic that you could get into, is that siblings, there's not enough information out there or public knowledge on how to deal with a person that has lost a sibling. That's extremely hard too, because the focus does get in general on the mom. So my husband would be like, when I would talk to him, even though he found different outlets than I did, completely different outlets than I did, he would say he wouldn't bring it up to me even if he wanted to. It almost like the reason we said, thinking like, ooh, I come home from work today and you look like you're okay today. So the last thing I would ever tell you is, man, I cried about Nick all day today when I was in my office, because he was afraid that would set me off. So I think it's just a matter of having to communicate with each other when you realize that there's a difference. And sometimes I have to admit, like, I was not great with that. I would get like really upset. I just didn't understand how his grief was so different than mine. So it took a lot of, communicating about it, and then a lot of him saying, just like I just said, like, I would never, I just honestly didn't want to bring it up to you. I was so afraid that would send you, back, and being a, protector. And so then we've had that talks about how sometimes I need to hear, what he's going through, and he's handled his grief in different ways. Like he talks about my son constantly too. So that's just, we talk about him like, we talk about him every day in our house. You know what I'm saying? Like my husband does, it's mainly me, but we talk about my son every day. And now we're at the point, but we're 5 years in, that now my husband can start, because we've had these talks about just keeping the communication open, and you just need to have that understanding. I hope I'm answering your question, but that you're going to grieve differently. And even if you're not even talking husband, wife, and I don't mean to generalize between male and females, because it could be the male. I mean, I've worked with men that are the emotional wrecks, and the wives that have gone back to work. I mean, so I didn't mean to generalize it that way. It just seems like one can go one way and one can go the other way. And then it's such a different way of grieving. And then each other doesn't understand, like why it's so different. And I even think for my husband, it was so hard for him to understand, how, like, I've just changed so much as a person. Like, he hasn't necessarily changed as much, but I've changed so much. And the things that really meant things to me before, they just don't mean anything to me anymore. And that's hard for him and my daughters to sometimes understand. So it just takes communication. It takes communication. And even my daughters are just like, Mom, how did you like walk away from your career as a pharmacist? Like, you loved it. Like, you really loved it. And I was just like, it's not what I want to do anymore. I want to just try to see if I can make a difference in people's lives. That's where my heart is.
I actually was just talk about how things work out. I met up with a couple of friends the other day for lunch, and we got onto the topic of um, death and dying, and just some of the things that happen in life. And our waitress actually shared with us that she had lost a child, and we had been talking about, one of my friends knew somebody who had lost a child, and one said, I believe in soul contracts, and my child had a contract to come here and to have me experience things in a way that I was going to change my life. And the change in my life was going to happen because they weren't going to be here anymore, and that I was meant to do something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And the other, our waitress shared with us that she just uses humor for everything. That is how she gets through it. And to the point where she didn't know us from a hole in the wall, and she was amazing. She just, good for her for just, putting it all out there, and just, what? And she she was funny. She said, if I don't horrify one person a day, I'm not having a good day.
No, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And oh my gosh,
And
I love that story.
she said, we were at a concert, and she said our family decided that we wanted to spread our child's ashes at multiple different places that we felt aligned. And so she said we were at a concert, and she went to go spread some of her daughter's ashes, and she said, ashed a guy in front of her who walked by. And she was just like caught in that moment. And she found that humor in things. And, here we are sitting here and listening to her share this story. And it was just like, she was like, and like, people get, horrified. And so she's like, you guys, I don't know why I'm sharing this, but like, you guys just seem like a really good group. And I could tell you more about those people and why she likely did. But she said, I talk about my daughter all the time. I share stories with everyone. I and it probably makes them really uncomfortable, but that works for me. And the humor part works for me. And people probably think that I'm really kind of twisted or something, but I think that that's the other point, is like you brought up, gratitude is really hard. I think the other thing that's really hard for people is to hear somebody have humor when they have had a significant loss and are grieving. And I know that that was one of the other things that you wanted to share, is your humor in healing as well, Sue. So I did want to make sure that we had a point, but I was talk about divine intervention. Like, here I am at lunch the other day, and this is what happened. Like,
unbelievable.
I'm not talking to Sue on Sunday. Like,
yeah, it's so now that's twofold, and this doesn't go for everybody. But at first, if I laughed, like the first couple times I laughed, it was like, oh my gosh, like I just disappointed my son. And of course not disappointed my son. My son loved when I laughed. He would actually do things in life to make me laugh. He thought it was too serious, and he thought I worked too much. And I think he's one of the reasons that he's kind of on the other side going like, life serious. Oh shoot, I should have said where. Don't work so much. And he wanted that for me. And I think he's that like little angel on my shoulder, like, that kind of pushed me to leave. But anyways, so there is two parts to the humor. There is when you first laugh for the first time, be it someone say something funny and you catch yourself laughing, the guilt that can come from that's extremely common the first couple times you laugh, until you realize that, okay, like I can actually still laugh. Now, whether you're kind of at the beginning and you have your grief, and you can still have joy. And that's the ultimate healing to me, is that you're always going to have the grief. And so if you can find more and more joy, but I, especially when I'm trying to share some of my experiences, instead of them all being sad or whatever, I just try to, try to make them funny. And I will just, I'll tell you just two kind of stupid quick ones. And then I have one really funny one is, I went through a phase of literally, dropping things. And to the point where you can't not tell people and laugh about it because it would be hysterical. I'd pour myself a glass of water. I would have the glass of water. And of course I didn't drop it over the counter. I would wait until I turned, until now it's, on the floor or whatever, and then just fall out of my hand. Fall out of my hand. How does it fall out of my hand? I mean, that happened over and over and over again. And so I just call it one of my little phases of grief is that anything that I put in my hand sometimes would just fall out. It could be a plant that I decided I did do a lot of, it was in the winter and I did play around with some plants, indoors and because we were given so many flowers and I was, getting my hands in the soil and that was extremely helpful. And then I can't tell you how many times I'd bring a plant to the sink to water it and then just turn around and it would just fall out of my hands. So, I just kid around how that was one of my personal, stages was that I dropped things. I just seriously just dropped things. And then I had another phase where I tripped or I fell just for no reason, just seriously for no reason. My husband was at the bottom of a staircase and I was walking down and talking to him, normal conversation, everything going along fine. And all of a sudden I just skipped the last 3 steps and landed in a face plant. And elbows down and my husband was just standing there in complete shock. Like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Just forgot there was 3 more steps. I don't know what to tell you. I went out with girlfriends that had taken me out and same thing. We probably had like this much snow and I just literally I don't know. I just went through an absolute phase of falling. And so I just make a joke out of it. I'm like, that was a phase. Thank God it didn't last forever. Each one kind of lasted a little period though. I would say like maybe a month or 6 weeks that I had each one of those. And it was wasn't as funny when it was happening, but it was funny afterwards. But another funny story that I would like to share and giving some humor is, and this goes back to how to help someone when they're grieving. In my experience, what I was going through at first, I didn't care about anything else. I mean, I seriously did not care about anything else. So if thank God people had brought food to our house because I would never have gone grocery shopping. There's not even a chance. And thank God, people had brought over, like I told you, the paper plates or things like that, because if there was dishes in my sink, I wouldn't have washed them. I would have let them pile till they were probably this high over my sink. Like I'm telling you, that's how little at the very beginning I cared about anything. And I'm probably telling you that if somehow, of course, I had lovely people that would come over. Not that I ever want people washing my dishes, but I could care less about the dishes. I probably would have opened up a garbage bag and just put them all in just to get them out of the sink and throw them away. Like I seriously didn't care. So one of my girlfriends, and this is kind of early on, she had lost a husband. So she kind of knew some of the things, kind of feeling the same way I did. And so I think she was the one that brought me, some of those essentials. And she said to me one day, she's like, Sue, I've been like kind of in a couple of your bathrooms and I've been underneath your cabinets and I don't think you have any toilet paper. And I was like, yeah. So she's like, well, a lot of people like coming in your house, like, do you want me to go to the store and get it? I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't care. Use your hand. Like, seriously, I don't care if I don't have any toilet paper in my house. Like, that's how, like, insane that your brain can come. I didn't care. And we laugh about that all the time, that how she was and then, even after the first time, she would have to check and make sure that, because I wasn't able to go into a grocery store. And she, for quite a long time, made sure that I was stocked up on those essentials because if I would have run out again, I wouldn't again. Someone say I have to go to the bathroom, so there's no toilet paper. I'd be like, okay, well, I'll have to wait till you get home then. And I'm not that type of person. So that's my funny toilet paper story.
Sue, I think this is a really important topic that we're on right now. What else would you say to people that are grieving to give them permission to experience joy and laugh?
Ooh, okay. Oh, such a good question. It's, I think it's actually just going to come as you move forward. And the one thing I really like and to say is that there's no way but through grief. If you try to push it down, you try to walk around it, that doesn't work. I mean, it just really doesn't work. And however way your healing process is going through the grief, which is extremely painful, but each step that you take or each peeling back of the onion in your grief process brings you that little bit closer. And as you're doing that work, all of a sudden, without even like really trying, you'll find, and after, like I said, the first couple times you laugh, you have this unbelievable amount of guilt. And after that, in your healing process, it kind of, in my, and I remind people, but joy is going to come. And even if it's small, but every small joy is a win. So if you could say at the end of, almost like we talked about gratitude, is that if you, there again, we are not talking about a person in the first, I don't want to insult anybody that's in the first couple of weeks or months or wherever they're at, but joy will come as you're working through the grief, and it will be sometimes some beautiful things that people do around you that bring you joy. It will be a sign that you get from your loved one, and it's really okay, because that's really the ultimate, the absolute ultimate. And this is a David Kessler expression, and I use this all the time with my grief clients, is that our journey through the darkness of the grief to the light is to remember your loved one with more happiness than pain. And so it's slow. It's slow, and it's learning that, like I said, the joy and happiness can exist at the same time as grief. And that's your really, the goal to get at. And it happens with very small moments of things that bring you joy. And then before you know it, it's maybe an hour, it can be slow. And sometimes for some people, it might be faster. They have a day of joy. They might do something for their family, with their family, and they have a whole entire day of joy. So it can be an hour of joy, or it can be a day of joy. And then it just keeps progressing, hopefully, to finding more and more joy in life. And realizing, one thing also is just realizing that my son would never want his legacy to be that his death destroyed my life. And so that would, I know that would destroy him. I know he's passed, but that would not be what he wants for me. So he loved to laugh. He loved to make people laugh. So I always knew that in the back of my head, that I had to try to do this. I had to do whatever work that I needed to do so that I could learn to experience joy.
Thank you.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing a lot that everybody's going to be different. Somebody
Yes.
might handle grief with more humor. Someone might handle it with finding more gratitude. Someone might handle it with just being in that sadness or anger. And I think, there are so many stages and places with grief. There are going to be people who just seem like they could wake up the next day and act like nothing happened, but that's okay for them. I think that,
Yes.
And I think that can be the hard part sometimes with couples is, well, now I'm not am I only dealing with this and like how horrible this feels, but now I'm mad at my partner or my spouse because they're not taking the time or putting the energy in this that they should be. And I think that that's the part where you said like communication is key.
Yes.
I think that those are the parts that more than anything is that people just knowing that there are so many different places that you can be and all of it is okay.
All of it is okay. And it can change day to day.
Yeah. So I think
And
that that's
all of it.
probably one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest things is it's not going to look the same for everybody.
No,
And just because
no,
someone isn't, you know, in a certain place doing what you think they should be doing doesn't mean that they're not still grieving.
exactly. Absolutely, exactly. That you have a good understanding of all of this, Julia. You really do, and it looks different for someone. It looks different for everyone, and whether it is anger, whether it is laughter, whether it is joy, or whether it's a combination of all three in one day, and the next day the same thing. It's so different. Not any day is the same.
Yeah, I know people who have gone like months and then they seem like, oh, I'm doing fine. Nope, I'll get back to work. Nope, I'm running to here, I'm going there. They're doing my social stuff. I'm, seeing family, seeing friends, and then all of a sudden it's like they run into a wall and it
Yep.
hits and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it just turns the world upside down all of a sudden. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, now it's hitting me. So I think that that's the part that, knowing that it all takes time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all something that, as you're going through it, knowing that any step of the way, that it's kind of like being on a roller coaster. Like something could shift and you're at that high
Exactly.
point and then you're dropping to a really low point and then maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
just cruising for a while and then it switches around again.
That's a
Um,
perfect analogy. Seriously.
but knowing that there are different ways and to connect with other people, that there are resources out there for everyone. I think,
Mm-hmm.
that is so important for people to have, knowing that
Mm-hmm.
people like you exist and are there to help guide them and help them through the process to
Mm-hmm.
understand a little bit more of it, I think is just so beneficial for people.
Absolutely. There, like I said, there's a David Kessler's website. That's a great one. We're going to put in the show notes a couple of books that I found personally very helpful. Like if you don't want to, get out there, and there's some, private Facebook groups so you can be very vocal, but yet still be in the comfort of your own home. But it's not going out to the whole world to see. All of those things are just great resources. And I do recommend, I recommend whatever you feel that you need. I needed everything. I worked with my regular doctor. I got myself a psychiatrist. I got a therapist and as well a spiritual mentor. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through this alone. And then for me, finding other moms that had gone through the same thing and the support of some really close friends was how I did it. Now, for someone else, it might look completely different. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong. And I think that's also the comparison. Oh, well, so and so, like they're outside or they're going on a trip or they're, doing something. They must be further, they're doing better in their grief than I am. How do you know? Even they might be going on that trip because their husband might really want to go on and they've decided to compromise, but their heart is still absolutely broken. But like grief can be like broken ribs where you don't see what the person's really suffering on the inside. So you never know. So there's no comparison. You don't know what's going on inside of someone or when they're not out and you see them. Yeah.
Sue, if people want to find you and work with you for your grief support, how do they find you and how would you like them to contact you?
Okay. So it's Sue Jacquot, and I see it's listed on here. It's JACQUOT.com. And that's my website. I have a Facebook page, same name, and an Instagram. And so through there, they can private message me, and through my website, you can send me a message.
Great.
So any of those ways. And I'm always happy to just talk to someone, sometimes it's, you can't just go on someone's website and be like, okay, I'm going to, sign up for, so sometimes you don't know what you need, and then you want to make sure that you're a good fit. So please reach out if you, are going through a hard time. It's my life's mission. And if I can help you even for an hour chatting with you, that makes my day. Actually, helping people helps me.
Julia, do you have any wrap-up questions?
I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. The other part of it for me is, and I bring this up almost every time, it's that human connection. I think that sharing things on a deeper level, they just create so much meaning. And, it's part of this is, like you said, it's Nick's legacy is that he's going to be present and helping other people through you. That's what I truly believe. And other people might have their beliefs, but I just want to say thank you for doing all of this, because I think it's so important for people to have someone that they could reach out to.
Absolutely. And even if it's just, going through my Facebook page, if that's all you're wanting to do, I have different, blogs I'm putting on there, or different posts that I relate to. You might relate to it. I mean, that's just, something you can do as well.
Yeah. And I mean, we always look to have like one little thing of wisdom from somebody. I know Leo shared like a thought of wisdom the other day, and I usually ask all the questions and I'm like, what do I have to share? What would be something that you feel like would be one spiritual practice or mindset shift that you feel like could really help change this for somebody?
Like I said, everybody is different. For me, it is that connection with my son. So that quiet time that I try to meditate every day and try to speak to him. And many times, we have full-on conversations, and other times you have to be patient with yourself. And, sometimes it's just one or two words, or he'll get the information to me through a sign. And, but they're right there. You just really need, if that's your beliefs, but that's mine, they're really right there. And they want you to know that they're okay as much as you want to know if they're okay. But they have that same need, and they have just such an ability to be able to send signs. It's unbelievable. But you just have to be willing to look for them and accept them when you see it, and not just say, well, okay, that cardinal almost crashed into my windshield, but that had to have been a coincidence. Well, crashing into your windshield is not really a coincidence. If you have 10 bird feeders in your backyard and 10 cardinals flying, then you're like, okay, well, you have cardinal bird feeders. I don't necessarily call that a sign, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the signs are so in your face that it's just, yeah. So if you can, you can look for them if you believe in that, and just try to build a relationship of communication somehow. Some people do it, I'll mention quickly, in automatic writing. Just another thing is, you just automatically, I would wake up in the middle of the night, because they say to really not be in your open, like maybe not in the middle of the afternoon for some people can, and just get up and just write, and then just ask them questions, and just let your hand just scribble. And a lot of people, I've gotten a lot of answers from Nick that way. It's not my easiest way to connect with him. But a lot of people do it that way. But I think just spending some quiet time and just trying to figure out, between the person that you've lost and yourself, how is your communication going to be? And for many people, it might just be, a sign, and the sign always comes when you need it. And that doesn't mean if you don't get a sign when you need it, it means you probably missed it, because they are sending the signs.
What I share with a lot of people that they feel like they aren't feeling their loved ones or seeing these signs, what I kind of share with people, because our grief is so loud,
Yes.
it kind of overshadows the stuff that they may be trying to send us, because that's our grief is sort of distracting us from actually seeing these signs from them.
100%. Absolutely 100%. That is such the truth, that when you're in your deepest grief, or a period of deep grief, you won't see the signs. You're just not able, because sometimes they're subtle, sometimes they're smash in your face, but sometimes they're subtle. And Leo, what you just said is the absolute truth. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sue, for this awesome conversation that I think is much needed, and I think people can learn a lot and even probably re-listen to this. So if anybody is struggling and they're listening and they feel like they connect with Sue, reach out to her.
Thank you. I've enjoyed so much getting to know you, Leo, and Julia. You're just such a beautiful light. I've loved having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Sue. It's wonderful getting to know more about you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for what you do in all the, different podcasts that you do to just educate people on all sorts of different things. It's needed.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to Mystery of the Soul. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, topic suggestion, or just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website at mysteryofthesoul.com. Reach us on Instagram, email us at mysteryofthesoulpodcast@gmail.com, and if you're interested in booking a session with Leo, visit his website at leojmccarthy.com.